The fear of learning really is based upon a foundation of a fear of failure. And we've inadvertently taught our children and even our students to be scared of failure instead of learning from failure. And this is because we have simply taught them that there is nothing to learn from failure. They are embarrassed by failing. We have embarrassed our children and our students. And this simply translates into that fear of learning. So how did we get to this point? Honestly, our students and our children have repeatedly received negative reinforcement, or maybe they're not getting the positive reinforcement they need from failure. And this comes because of poor test scores or even poor homework scores, poor feedback. And they feel there wasn't a point to even bother with future homework because they can't get away with anything and they can't do anything and they'll never succeed. So they have a lack of doing one's best on a test and homework, even simply refusing to do it at all. It's a horrible cycle that's been created. And how can we change this cycle? Well, there are some first and simple things that every parent and every single teacher can do. Let's first be sure that we communicate with parents and with teachers, and let's get involved in that process and let them help each other. We really do want to help each other and realize that we're on the same page. Parents and teachers can be the greatest advocates in changing this negativity. Second, praise. Praise, 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 praise. Positive approval. And I can't emphasize this enough. Focus on the positive. Let them see that there are even positive things that can be learned through failure. It's really difficult to focus on the positive things, especially when we're teaching students or leading others. So I'll share experience. When I mopped the kitchen floor for the very first time, I was about 8 years old, and I was really proud of myself because I hadn't had any help and I hadn't been asked to do it, and my mother was so happy. When my dad came home from work, I bounced up and down and told him what I had done. He grabbed me and I had his hand and I drug him to the kitchen to show him the clean floor. But it was still soaking wet. My father jumped onto a kitchen chair and he wobbled precariously like he was going to fall into an ocean of water. Then he grabbed the second chair and he used them as stilts to walk to the refrigerator to get a drink. And my family laughed. I did too. As I grew up, that scene has been repeated over and over in my family. Not necessarily over mopping, but families are good at that. We're really good at recalling the embarrassing moments of our lives. And my proud moment became a moment of ridicule and jokes for decades to come. And I share this not to disgrace my family or my father because my father's a wonderful man, but because I believe that there are some wonderful, powerful lessons that can be learned from experience. Even in jest, criticism can be hurtful. And as parents and educators, we should never, ever want to make a learning experience into a negative experience. However they happen. My father would never intentionally hurt my feelings. He is my best friend, my greatest hero, and he is even my greatest support. I even carry with me in my planner a note that he mailed to me a couple of years ago telling me how proud he is of me. It's one of my most precious possessions because my father has only written me 2 letters in my life. But people do get offended, and our children often experience this negative learning moment because of inadvertent experiences or reactions. So what can we do to really change this fear of learning and create it into a joyful experience? So acknowledge and praise those small victories. Let your children and students see the excitement on your face and encourage curiosity. My mother did a great job with this when we were very little, and she continues to do it with her grandchildren, and now she has great-grandchildren. And what she did is she would sit us on the counter as we cooked, and we got to taste the salt, we got to put our finger in the sugar and the flour, and she encouraged us to ask questions about what things really were and how they improved or changed cooking. And that's just one experience. But we want to provide positive learning experiences for our children. And this doesn't mean that it has to be positive learning experiences that we only have them, but learning from the failure as well. Work alongside with our children and share your failures or your disappointments or how you overcame them. There's nothing wrong with your child seeing that you may have done something wrong. Point out past positive learning experiences. This is really important. And be sure to take a deep breath, because let's be honest, sometimes we get so frustrated that you just want to scream. Or as my husband says, you have to contribute to that swear jar, right? But we want to point out that it's okay to be frustrated. And by us taking that deep breath as we get frustrated with those learning experiences, then our children will learn that they can also take a deep breath. We also want to be able to provide them with a learning space. So maybe they need a peaceful or calm, inviting space to do homework, but they need a space of their own. And maybe their space is the corner of the family room, or maybe they want a desk in the corner of the bedroom, but you need to work with them and see what works best for them. Also, give them something special. My favorite thing is to make sure that you give them like a special pen or a pencil, and this is a way to trick the mind. And by using the same writing utensil on homework, then the pencil may know the answers. And this has actually been a very successful trick that you can use from elementary school to higher education. Provide them with items of comfort. So like for one of my children, I gave him a water bottle that sat on the corner of her desk, and that helped her in really unfamiliar or stressful circumstances. And she also used it when she was on sports teams. But we want to make sure that they have something comfortable with them at all times. And maybe it's a smell or a scent or whatever. Think of it kind of as their binky or their security blanket, but you're providing something that is okay for them to take as a grown-up. So be positive and positive example actually of learning, and show your passion for learning something new. So at dinner time, maybe you want to sit down and say, man, I learned the coolest thing today. We did that once with our son. He wanted to know whether or not the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere and of the brain, how they communicated, and if they could still communicate, or what happens if one side or the other was damaged. And he watched entire medical surgery procedures on it. It was probably the most disgusting conversation we've ever had at a dinner table, but we learned wonderful things. And before we were done, we were all interested in it. We also want to make sure that we have integrated our learning into a circumstance. For instance, teaching fractions, have your child cook with you and half or double the recipes. For a while, we did Kool-Aid, and I'm not a big Kool-Aid fan, but we did Kool-Aid during one summer and we let them use sugar, but we kept switching out the measuring cup inside the sugar container. So one day, if they wanted to have half a cup of sugar and there was a 1/3 cup in there, they had to figure it out. We also want to demonstrate that learning doesn't have to just happen in a classroom. It can happen everywhere, and learning can be fun. Take your children to a festival. Let them learn from someone. The other day we went and watched somebody make glass. I mean, how fun is that? Just make sure that learning is fun.